Good morning. Hey y'all. Okay, so I'm back. I always have some other stuff to say, but I gotta try to figure out how to get it condensed down to a smaller version of just a small video. Okay, so remember y'all, I told y'all how do we get into this season? We got into this season because of um, the first thing God revealed to me about 4 weeks or so ago was, because I was asking God, why does it seem like, what's going on out here with all this corona and all this? And I asked that, and then he responded. And now keep in mind, I told you, I had that experience, something like that happened back in when my mom was passed, when she was transitioning back in 2009. And I'd asked a month before she passed, why does it seem like all hell breaking loose in the world? And he came to me a month later and said, you asked this question and it's all for my glory. So I'm telling you, let's fast forward to now. Whenever all hell is breaking loose in the world, I know, first of all, what that means is for his glory. It's for him to be glorified through it. So you should just take that as a takeaway, no matter what, in the future, whenever it's for his glory. That's what it's always about. Okay. So I told you. Then I told you, the first thing he dropped in my spirit was 400. When did slavery start? That's like the first words he dropped in my spirit. Now everything typically happens between 3 and 6 a.m. Right? So until I was like, 16, and I looked it up, 16, 19, but it didn't do anything for me at all. So then, and then it was like, he was like, what year is it now? So then I looked it up and it was like 2020. And I'm like, oh, then I calculate the difference, like 401. What's this? Then it dawned on me, it was holy season. And then it was like, 400 years was 2019. And this is the first holy season since that anniversary passed. So I thought that was amazing. And then I looked it up and I was like, okay. And then God took me to Genesis 15:13. So all of this is happening because God is going to fulfill Genesis 15:13. That's the whole reason. Then I told you that God started to reveal to me with the 15:13 that this is us. This 15:13 Genesis, he's talking about us, which then revealed to me that we are not Gentiles. That's what he was showing me. We are not Gentiles. We are direct descendants. And then I was like, oh, we direct. So then he started taking me to who exactly we are. And I told you in some other videos that we are out of the tribe of Judah, out of the direct descendants of Abraham, because that tells you in that scripture, and that we're in the direct line of Judah. And then I told you some of the scriptures he showed me that took me there. He showed me in Ezekiel 37, probably around verse 15, starting in verse 15. And then he showed me how Big Mama and them are in Ezekiel 37, when it's talking about them dry bones. When you start at verse number 1, all the way down to about that 15. If you notice down around 11 or 12, the bones were saying that we were cut off, and see, and that's showing you that's us. Okay. And then he was also showing me in First Peter, second chapter, around the 4th and 5th verse, he was comparing us to Jesus right there, because he was saying we're rejected by humans, chosen and precious to God. And then in verse 5, he was saying, like you also. And then he says, that's us. He says, like you also. Then he said, do you see yourself right there? And I could see my family right there, because they were all rejected. But, though in generations, we've been rejected by humans. But God said, look, you were still chosen and precious to me. Okay. And then he also showed me back on Luke 21st chapter, starting in verse 20, he was showing us how we actually were slaves, how we were captured in Jerusalem, because we were Jerusalem. He wants us to, every time you read the Bible, when you see Jerusalem, think of yourself, okay, your family. And that was showing when we were actually captured as slaves, and then also brought in on ships, because if you keep going down through there, it talks about the tossing of the seas. And then he starts showing me his emotions, God's emotions that's going on right now. Okay. Is you can see the last 400 years, he was showing it to me in a picture, and he was using King Darius and Daniel as illustration. So if you read book of Daniel, 6th chapter, around from the verses 19 to 27, you'll see a lot of what's going on in God's heart now. So okay, so that we were actually here. And I told you, God took me to those scriptures early in some of those earlier videos. He said he entered this the reason we were here for 400 years out of our rebellion, and he got mad and he entered an oath out of his anger, and that was in Hebrews the 3rd chapter 11th verse. And he just said then that's when he compared himself to King Darius, and King Darius, he entered an oath, a decree out of pride, and then he didn't realize that Daniel was going to get caught up in it, and then that's when he went and ran to Daniel the following morning. So when you start at like verse number, I think it's like 19, where he couldn't even sleep. He was tossing and turning all night, right? And he ran is the very moment he could get there, the very moment he was free to go check on Daniel, he did it. And then and he immediately checked him over his wounds. And I told you, that's what God is doing with us. He is immediately going to run and check on his first opportunity to get to us is this second Passover. This second Passover is in the Bible. It's in Numbers chapter 9, starts in about 9, in about verse number 9, probably through 14. Y'all should read that. That second Passover, first of all, I told you I didn't even know anything about Passover before 4 or 5 weeks ago. Okay. God is the one brought that to me. Okay. And so he also showed me, Easter. Easter is really a pagan holiday. I think he grades us on a curve because we use it as Resurrection Sunday, even though it's a fertility and eggs, and that's where all the eggs and stuff come from. But it's always around Passover, right? So, but you got the Passover, but then you got this thing called the second Passover. And that's where you'll end up finding that in Numbers chapter 9 through 14. Now, that one is this is okay. How that was established is Aaron had gone to Moses and said, you know what, we couldn't do the first Passover because we had to bury some folks, and it wasn't our problem. We didn't know that somebody was gonna die. Now that made us unclean. We couldn't participate in the first Passover. That's how you know these black folk. Anyway, okay. So he was like, we didn't know somebody was gonna pass. I mean, how? So now we can't get forgiveness of our sins, So, and then he said, okay, Moses said, okay, cool. Let me go check with God, and I'm gonna let y'all know. So then he went back, and you'll see that in Numbers 9 through 14, Numbers 9, chapter 9, verses 9 through 14. And then Moses went to God, and then we got back on him and said, yeah, okay. God said, cool. Y'all can, if y'all been touching dead bodies or something, we just gonna push out. You can do Passover a month from now. That's this May 7th, y'all. That's this May 7th, okay? So you can do a month later. So we are still in holy season. Don't get it twisted. We still in holy season. And then what's so funny, though, check this out. If you read those scriptures, he said, you can start it in verse. He said, you can, because you've been touching dead bodies, you can just push it out and go to the second Passover. And they call it the second Passover. And that's actually on the Jewish calendar. We are not Jewish. We are Israelites. We are out of the children of Israel. That's what I know so far, because that's what Genesis 15:13 is speaking of. So he says, okay, you can do that. You can go out there and you can participate in Passover, the second Passover. But what's so interesting about it, if you read it, they only asked him about touching dead bodies. But when Moses took that question to God says yes, because they've been touching dead bodies, they can participate in this second Passover a month later. And then God threw in something nobody asked for. He says, and if they're on a journey. Nobody even asked that. That's how I know God had us in mind when he said it, because it didn't even apply to them. He says also if they're on a journey. That wasn't a question. But they asked it, but they got it. Anyway, so y'all, that's how we got put out the house. We got put out the house for 400 years because God said, you'll never enter my rest. He was just mad. But then when his anger calmed down, we were already put out, and he had to do what he said, because God is not a man that he should lie. Neither is he the son of man that he has to repent. If he said it, he's going to perform it. So that's the reason we ended up getting put out of that, he said, you'll never enter my rest. So we ended up getting put out for 400 years, right? But you know what? How we know we are who God says we are. Because even though we got put out, and even though, we had these horrible, our ancestors lived horrible lives, mistreatments, and that's what that Genesis 15:13 speaks about. And that's where God is, and I told you this coronavirus is the forerunner of God's Passover. It's the forerunner of his Passover. But you know how we know? Because he put us out, but then we didn't know who we were. Until 4 weeks ago, I didn't know any of this, but we didn't know who we were. And the thing about that, what's so fascinating about it is we still, even though we were fed images of 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 white Jesuses and white children playing. I think all of that was really just designed to by the you know, that's a fight for God, not a fight for us. But that was designed. Those fake images were designed to instill an image of inferiority in us. But what's so amazing about that, y'all, is even with those images, even though we got put out the front door of the house for 400 years, we still made it back through the back way. It's because we came in through Gentiles, even though we're not Gentiles. We're in the bloodline of Judah. We are something in us, even though consciously, we were probably confused by those images, but subconsciously, something in our DNA caused us to still stay around that house and find another way in. So we end up finding another way in through Gentiles. We went in through the Gentile door because we didn't know who we were. We still got in the house, and that's why God blesses us. Because one, he knew that we didn't know who we were, but he's going to show us in this upcoming season. And also, we actually stayed around the house and found another way in. We still worship God in masses, even though not knowing, we thinking we coming in through Gentiles. We actually, see, that's why God blesses us and loves us so, I'm certain. And we are still precious to God. That's why he's specifically talking about that, us in 15:13, because we got put out the front door. Then we forgot who we were, but something in us still had us going around and trying to enter, and we still entered the door through the Gentile way. Even though we were part of the family from the giddy up. Okay, wait, hold on a second. Sorry, y'all. I turned around and inadvertently hit the wrong button and stopped my recording. So y'all got to look at that first part, that first 11 minutes or whatever that last video is I just did. But this is just adding on to it. Okay, so this is part 2 of that video. All right, so it's just amazing how God has just starting to reveal himself to us as it relates to who we actually are. It's like we got put out the house from the front door. Now we're going through the Gentile door. We went in through the Gentile door, not knowing who we were. So if you look at verses, 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, probably around verse 9 and 10. Because he said, first you didn't know you were people, now you're people. But see, so that just shows you the awesomeness of how God actually is and how he just loves us, and that we still stayed camped out around that house for 400 years, and we still found us another way in, and he was blessing us from the Gentile table, not knowing who we were in him. That's like, it's just so awesome. It's kind of like Joseph, y'all. It really is. It's like when Joseph was sold into slavery, and his brothers then end up going to Egypt when he was second in command, right? And they were hungry. There was a famine in the land. They didn't even know that they were special. They didn't even know they were special, but it was, and they just figured they was gonna go get food like everybody else, standing in the same line with them regular Gentile folks, not knowing their brother was the ones giving the food out. Okay, so that is where we are, y'all. That is where we are. That is where we are. They thought it was going to break our spirit, but I'm going to tell you, May 7th is the reason we got to participate in this communion. May 7th is the beginning of the second Passover. We have got to line up and get into that, y'all. That is where we are. That is designed for us, the 400-year folk, and descendants of slavery in the United States. That's who we are. That's this second Passover is for us. May 7th, y'all. I'm gonna need y'all to take communion in your house. That's all you need is a cracker, not bread, because it got leaven and yeast in it. And just in one cracker can feed 100 people in your house, because it's really symbolic. You're gonna break that cracker, and then you're gonna read 1 Corinthians 11th chapter. I want to say it's verse 23 through 26, and then a little bit of juice, just a drop of it. That is all you doing. It's gonna take you 2 minutes to do it, but that's the beginning of the Passover. That's the beginning. That's God's first chance. His first if he follows his own rules, which he does, that's his first opportunity to pass over and start revealing himself again to us as the direct descendants of Judah. That's what's happening. And we had all these fake images all these years, y'all, and we still held on. And you know what's ironic about it is, if you look, I looked at, there was a Pew Research Center did a survey in 2011 on how racially diverse are U.S. religious groups. And then they had a religious group in there called atheists. 78% of all atheists are white, and 3% of atheists are black. And I asked my question, where them 3% live at? I mean, because I'm even surprised with 3%. But the thing about it is, if you can that's how you know it's the devil is a liar. Because if you can put a white Jesus and white everything, but yet you still got 78% of atheists being white, and they got all these images to help pull them in, that's telling us something. That's telling you about your DNA. That's what it's doing. It's telling you about your DNA, and that you're coming from you're coming from a spiritual line anyway. And the only spiritual line that's out there, y'all, from that Bible is through Shem. Through Shem, which is the oldest child of Noah. That's the first time you ever see in possession form where when Noah blessed Shem, the first time you ever say that Jehovah is the God of Shem. That's the first time you ever see that in the Bible, where he starts putting God with somebody, and he put it with Shem. Didn't put it with Japheth, didn't put it with Ham, but he put it with Shem. And we're out of that line of Shem. We're out of the line of Shem, because Abraham is a direct descendant of Shem, and Judah is a direct descendant of Jacob, who's in the line of Abraham, right? And hopefully I say that right, because I said it all fast. But anything else I forget to say, y'all, I'm gonna put it in the notes. And I'm sorry about that other piece. Y'all gonna have to piece these together, because I don't know if I can do that one twice. Anyway, but we'll see. All right, so, but this is what I have for right now. And I got a lot of other stuff, but I got to keep these videos short, because I know y'all be wanting to get on me. Okay, so that's what we got. So this is part 2. The other one was part 1. All right. Talk to you soon. Love you.